New customers, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code DEFEND to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you place a $5 bet on anything. That's code DEFEND. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 and over and physically present in Ohio. Valid one offer per first-time depositors who have not already redeemed $200 in free bets via pre-launch offer. Minimum $5 deposit and wager. $200 issued as bonus bets. Eligibility restrictions apply. See dkng.co/OH for terms.
The last thing you want to hear while listening to your favorite podcast is another gimmicky ad. NJM feels the same way. It's why they provide award-winning service without the use of mascots or repetitive jingles. And when you upgrade to NJM, you could even save on your auto insurance. Better service and possible savings? Sounds like a win-win. No jingles or mascots, just great insurance. NJM. Visit njm.com/podcast for a quote to see how much you could save on your auto insurance.
Hello, thank you for tuning in to another episode of NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice on Cannabis Radio. I'm your host, Bethany Moore, the Director of Communications at the National Cannabis Industry Association. Today, I have a couple of guests from Fox Rothschild, a member of NCIA. Andrew Halbert is a member of the firm's Cannabis Law Practice Group and counsels clients on structuring, vetting, and closing purchases and sales of licensed cannabis businesses, and provides guidance on regulatory compliance in Illinois and other states where cannabis has been legalized. He also advises clients in cannabis and other industries on a full range of corporate transactions, including debt and equity offerings, and corporate governance. We also, from the firm, have Ron Williams. He's a seasoned construction lawyer who has advised numerous businesses, including major players in the cannabis industry, on the legal, contractual, and operational aspects of major construction projects throughout the U.S. and abroad. Ron helps clients structure and implement construction agreements that mitigate risk and facilitate efficient on-time completion of projects. Lovely to have you both on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you, Bethany.
Great to be here.
Wonderful. So let's start by getting to know you both a little bit better. It's always nice to hear what other industries and backgrounds folks that are involved in the cannabis industry got into prior to this exciting world. So Andrew, let's start with you and hear more about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know that it's terribly exciting. I puttered around for a while as kind of a general corporate attorney, doing M&A work, corporate governance, stuff like that. And then it was just a matter of, fortuitous timing and starting to work with the right people. Around 2014, right about the time when Illinois legalized medical cannabis, I started working with a group of attorneys that eventually formed the Fox Rothschild Chicago office. And they were a group of attorneys that had some regulatory experience, a former state's attorney, as well as someone who used to work with the Illinois Gaming Board. And so when cannabis went online and was legal in Illinois, a lot of the regulations overlapped with some of those regulations in the gaming and liquor industry. So they saw a real opportunity to jump into the cannabis industry and get involved there. And they tapped me to help out on the corporate side because that was a gap in their expertise. So I was able to help some of those early adopters or early people that jumped into the Illinois cannabis industry prepare their applications and also get set up on the corporate side.
That's interesting. Awesome. So kind of fell into it. Did you have any relationship with the cannabis plant, or did you have any stigmas that you had to jump through, any hurdles in order to do this work, or did it come kind of naturally?
I think it came relatively naturally. I do enjoy the cannabis plant personally. My wife is also suffers from migraines, and so she has a medical cannabis card here in Illinois, and I'm her caregiver. So it's been great to see the plant help her out with those issues. And it's been great to see the Illinois medical and recreational market really, expand in the last couple of years.
That's great to hear that she's finding some relief. Absolutely. Migraines are no joke. Great. So Ron, let's hear from you as well. What is your background and experience before getting involved in cannabis?
Sure. And thank you again for the opportunity, Bethany. I've been practicing for over 35 years, probably over 30 years of which has been in the construction arena. I have done historically large, complicated litigation matters, and then, of course, applying those skills to transactions, developed a very significant transactional practice. Here at Fox, we have one of the premier construction practices in the country, which marries very well with a cannabis practice that really is just among the top in the nation. And so naturally, my experience of over 30 years in construction on the transaction side has helped tremendously with respect to major projects for clients of Fox Rothschild in the cannabis arena.
I see. And how did you end up getting involved in the cannabis space? And did you have a personal connection with the cannabis plant or movement?
So in terms of becoming involved, through Fox Rothschild's client base of cannabis grow firms, as well as reputationally my ability to do transactions, it was an easy fit for me to assist clients with respect to creating, in effect, the right teams with the right contract documents so that they could have projects that were successful and on time. I don't have any personal experience as heartwarming as Andrew's is, and I have the utmost admiration for obviously his work and his support for his wife in that regard.
Sure, absolutely. So when it came to doing this kind of work for a cannabis company, it's just like, maybe not just like, but it's just similar to any other industry that you might work for. You've got the same goals, you've got the same processes for the most part, or you adapt as necessary, right?
Absolutely, Bethany. With respect to projects in the cannabis space, obviously bringing in projects on time is of paramount importance because it's all about delivering products that needy consumers are waiting for, especially in geographies that are new. And therefore, it's important to have the right kinds of contracts in place to ensure that clients, in effect, have those projects succeed and that there are no surprises.
Right. Yes. Good point. Especially in newer market states that have recently legalized. I'm sure plenty of folks getting licenses want to have their doors open as soon as legal sales start and not have to be late to the game.
Well, you're absolutely right, and that's not unusual in an industry such as cannabis. I mean, the same that Andrew mentioned before, gaming. Obviously, we have a premier gaming practice, and in that sphere as well, the ability to deliver projects on time and on budget is mission critical for client success, and that's a set of skills that I could easily translate into the cannabis space for purposes of servicing cannabis clients of Fox Rothschild.
Great.
And, espe-
Awesome.
and especially too in a market where like Illinois, where the licenses are relatively limited, and for the most part, all the dispensaries are pretty much selling the same, general group of products from the same growers.
Yeah.
That first mover advantage and getting your doors open first can be a big advantage. So I think that's another reason why Ron's work can be very helpful for our clients.
Cool. So before our first commercial break here, is there anything else what's going on with Fox Rothschild this year? Any exciting news, any goals coming up generally with the firm and how are things going?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the big news in Illinois is obviously the new social equity dispensary licenses, that are coming online now that were issued as a result of the lotteries that took place over the last summer. And so we're dealing with clients now, some of them that got licenses in that process and are now figuring out, how do we raise the equity that we need to build out the business? How do we open our doors on the time frame that the state regulators are requiring? And basically, how do we go from this great conditional license that we just got to an actual real license that's generating some money. And so, there have been a lot of developments in that space, regulatory wise, IDFPR regulations about exactly how that can happen. And so we've been working with our clients to deal with those and, try to get their doors open, or in some cases, try to get them sold to people that have that expertise and that capital.
Yeah, quite a few moving parts there, it sounds like.
New customers, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code DEFEND to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you place a $5 bet on anything. That's code DEFEND. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 and over and physically present in Ohio. Valid one offer per first-time depositors who have not already redeemed $200 in free bets via pre-launch offer. Minimum $5 deposit and wager. $200 issued as bonus bets. Eligibility restrictions apply. See dkng.co/OH for terms.
Well, yeah. Well, it's always exciting to see new states coming online, as we like to say, and opening their doors, and also the states that are implementing social equity programs into their laws as well, to give folks that were directly impacted by the war on drugs an opportunity to participate in this industry. So thanks for sharing that insight about what's going on in Illinois.
Of course.
And on that note, let's go ahead and take our first commercial break and then come back and really start diving into these issues. So stay tuned, everybody. We will be right back.
NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice will return once we give a voice to our sponsors.
All right, we're back on NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice on Cannabis Radio. I'm your host, Bethany Moore with NCIA, and I'm talking with Andrew and Ron from Fox Rothschild, a firm and member of NCIA. So we're going to start by talking about the intersection between designing a cannabis facility and the construction that goes along with it, and the legal side of things as attorneys. Let's talk about how that even comes up to begin with. Andrew?
Yeah, of course. So the most common way that it comes up kind of dovetails nicely with what I was just talking about, and that's some of these new social equity licenses coming online in Illinois. So when a new license, when a company's issued a new license, especially some of these social equity licenses, they were not required to have a facility, selected and finalized at the time that they award a license. So there's a lot of work that needs to get done in between when a conditional license is awarded and when they can actually, open their doors for business. And one of the things that needs to get done, obviously, is they need to build out their dispensary. Because cannabis in most states is a new industry, it's not a situation for the most part where you can come in and purchase an existing facility that's set up with everything you need. States regulate things like security, distances between doors, the vault requirements and all that kind of thing. So for the most part, if you are going to open a cannabis dispensary in a state where it's just become legal, you pretty much have to build that facility from the ground up. And so when our clients, we work with a lot of big multi-state operators, and they want to come into these states and purchase licenses that have been issued to these new social equity people. And so when they come in and purchase a license, they're typically purchasing, a license that might have a lease, but they don't have a facility built out yet. And so we need to help that multi-state operator guide the licensee through the construction process and getting the facility built out in a manner that, our client wants, so that when they finally open their doors with their license, they're in a facility that, matches up with what they've been doing in other states and meets their requirements to start selling cannabis.
Right. Got it. Ron, would you have anything to add on to that?
Absolutely, Bethany. Just following up on what Andrew said, with respect to the construction lawyer role, specifically given the timing and the need to act upon issuance of a license, it's important for the lawyer to have helped a cannabis client assemble the right design team with the requisite experience and knowledge of the regulations and the importance of compliance with all regulatory requirements, statutory requirements, and obviously land use planning. And it's also very important for construction counsel to have identified the right contractor, again, with a requisite expertise, background, skill set, management team within that contractor to ultimately work hand in glove with the design team to start the project on time and finish on time with no surprises and deliver a grow facility or even a commercial facility that is consistent with all legal requirements. And that's where a construction lawyer really can make a difference, because if you don't provide that level of expertise, a construction project of any type can be delayed or worse, could be stopped because of faulty workmanship, faulty design. And then, of course, you end up with a situation where your facility is not up and running and approved by the applicable governmental entities, and that's the sort of morass that can easily really set a cannabis owner back dramatically on a project. So expertise is mission critical here, both in terms of what Andrew's doing as well as what a construction lawyer like I do.
Right. Like you said, no surprises. Like any surprises in that process would definitely not be a good one.
Correct.
Right. So on the construction side of the cannabis industry, before the facility or dispensary even opens their doors, before any plants are growing, before any customers walk in the front door, um, this is an important side to the whole process. And after a certain number of years here of legal cannabis in the US, I think there's probably some best practices, and even some best practices in non-cannabis construction that we've got our arms around now. Some do's and don'ts, perhaps that you've seen in this process that would be coming up. Is that right, Andrew?
Absolutely. I think the biggest issue in the cannabis industry and when it comes to construction, and Ron really touched on this, is the regulations. So, in a lot of cases, there are regulations governing, very minute details of how these facilities need to be constructed, what kind of security measures need to be in place, and the timing of everything as well. As I mentioned earlier, in many cases, once a state issues a conditional license, the clock starts ticking for that entity to convert that license into an actual final license and start selling cannabis or growing cannabis or whatever the license is for. And so it's very important when you're looking at, construction partners and entering into construction projects to be sure that everyone's on the same page with respect to these timing requirements. As I'm sure Ron can tell you, delays come up in construction all the time. And when you're not in a highly regulated industry, that delay might not be that big of a deal. But if you have a ticking clock and you undergo a delay at a time when it's really mission critical for you to get up and running, that's something that the parties need to address at the outset in the contract to figure out, be sure that the party that's building the facility has the ability to, expedite the construction or force some things to happen to the extent they need to as a result of the regulatory process.
Got it. Got it. What would you add to that, Ron?
Well, Andrew raised many important points in this regard. Obviously, your design team needs to work, as I mentioned before, very effectively with the contractor that is involved in the project. Personalities frequently in construction can either make or break a project, and communications have to be efficient, they have to be clear, and they ultimately have to be effective. And those communications have to occur between the design professional, the contractor, and ultimately the owner if the project's going to be successful. As Andrew mentioned earlier, there's always the potential for delay. When it comes to construction, especially with COVID, there have been numerous delay, if you will, reasons offered by various project participants. And it's important to know how to constructively vet those, to be solution oriented and ultimately stay on track so that the project is completed on time with little to no surprise. And the surprise can come in terms of claims for additional monies. The surprise can come in terms of sometimes substandard performance. Obviously, part and parcel of that is making sure that the entire team which at the end of the day is a people-oriented team, has to have the requisite skill set to understand that the highest standards have to be met when it comes to cannabis construction, and that there's no excuse for substandard construction or late construction.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, yeah, COVID was certainly one of those quote unquote bad surprises that I'm sure halted and caused a lot of messy legal issues for a lot of things that were happening in the world, cannabis and non-cannabis for sure. That makes sense. And maybe weather and like you were saying, substandard performance, just people who aren't qualified to be doing it as well. Interesting. Well, we're about to take our last commercial break here. And I'd like to talk a bit about what's going on with NCIA on the other side of the commercial break as well. But we have got one more question to ask of you about building a brand new building. So let's go ahead and take that commercial break, and then we'll be right back to wrap up our conversation on this episode. Stay tuned.
NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice will return once we give a voice to our sponsors.
All right, we're back on NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice on Cannabis Radio, chatting with Andrew and Ron from Fox Rothschild. So, one more thing I wanted to ask. Not all cannabis companies have the luxury of building a brand new building from scratch, from ground up, right? So, many are taking existing structures and then making alterations in order to open their cannabis business. I wonder if that is easier or more difficult, what side that falls on generally when it comes to the legal oversight of that construction process and how it's different from ground up construction. Ron, could you jump in on that one?
Of course, Bethany. When it comes to taking an existing structure, it's very important for highly qualified professionals to assess the appropriateness of that existing structure to determine whether or not it's feasible to use for purposes of creating a new operation. And sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But if the cannabis owner employs the right personnel and the right professionals in pre-construction, that determination can be made. Let's assume that it is feasible to take an existing structure, then and to create a new operation through new construction of that, or if you will, remodeling. Then, and you'd probably see that more in the commercial context. Then what you want to do is you want to make sure that your design team and contractor work in advance of starting construction to not only determine what's an appropriate schedule, but also an appropriate budget. And to the extent possible, fix the pricing for that work. There are always going to be additional costs with respect to the sort of remedial work for an existing structure that is going to happen. It could be removing of a hazardous material, or it could be replacing existing, if you will, utility lines, things like that. But those are things that a good team will anticipate up front, and then of course anticipating what we call long lead time items and ordering those ahead of schedule for purposes of implementing into the construction process is very important to keep the project on time. In this era of supply chain interruptions and disruptions and shortages, knowing how to get the material that's needed is very critical, and that's why it's always an easier road to take to start out brand new. But sometimes it's not practical. Now, when it comes to a grow facility, it's probably the most practical thing to go new, because the nature of the buildings themselves really are very fine-tuned to the cannabis itself, and it's not simply a question of taking an existing facility. There are a lot of considerations there that really have to be met and make it less less feasible to consider for a cannabis grow facility.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, God forbid you're also using an old building and you have to like remove asbestos or from the 80s or something, right?
Exactly.
Um, Andrew, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, from my corporate and regulatory perspective, in all those things that Ron is talking about, the most important thing from my side is just communication. As I
Mm,
mentioned, there's deadlines that we have to meet on the regulatory side and communications that we might need to make to regulators. And it's always better if we have a heads up as early in the process as possible that we might need to request an extension or communicate something to a regulator. The situation that we're trying to avoid is we're coming up on a deadline and we find out a very short amount of time before the deadline that the company's not going to meet it because of a construction issue. And then everyone has to scramble to inform the regulators, try to obtain the proper amount of notice, when it's really probably something that if there was proper communication going on throughout between the design team, the construction team, and the corporate team, it's something we probably could have been able to address easily with the regulators, and it wouldn't be a big deal. It's only
mhm.
when that communication breaks down that it can really cause problems.
Right, those 11th hour crises is definitely want to avoid. That makes sense. Great. Well, I appreciate all that insight. And before we wrap up the episode, I hope you all will be able to make it to one of our industry social events. We are kicking off another tour around the country starting January 25th, just a couple days from now in Missouri. So we'll be in St. Louis on Wednesday, the 25th. And then we're going to California to both San Francisco and Los Angeles. We're having a Colorado Cannabis Caucus in mid-February. We're going to Seattle, Washington, Boston, Massachusetts, Miami, Florida, Portland, Oregon, New York City, Chicago, Illinois will be there May 5th. So, hoping to see some of those licensees and folks that are just getting into the industry there on May 5th at our Illinois Industry Social, plus Detroit, Michigan. And all of this is leading up to our 11th annual Cannabis Industry Lobby Days, which of course is in Washington, D.C. That'll be taking place May 16th, 17th, and 18th. And we are just thrilled to get back on the road after kind of taking quite a break during the heaviest of COVID restrictions. So we're just so excited to get back out there and see NCIA members and meet new folks that are just getting into the industry as well. So be sure to head to our website, thecannabisindustry.org, and check out our event calendar and go ahead and get registered. We look forward to seeing everybody there. And as we wrap up here, I just want to say thank you to both Andrew and Ron for your time today and for sharing your expertise as well. Where can folks find out more about Fox Rothschild?
So probably the best place would be foxrothschild.com. That's our website. You can look up Ron or I on there. Thank you so much, Bethany, to you and the NCIA for the opportunity to speak to you guys. And I will definitely be seeing you on May 5th, hopefully with a big group of Fox Rothschild folks.
Yes, wonderful. And thank you, Ron. Appreciate your time as well.
Thank you, Bethany. It's been a real pleasure, and I wish you the best for 2023.
Oh, thank you. Same back at ya. And thanks to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice. Until next time.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.
When Shopify says you can sell anywhere, oh, they mean it. Woo, hold up. Just got a new sale. Order fulfilled and shipped. Inventory levels good. Whoa, Shopify doesn't mind if you're at sea level. Or on top of the world. You can run and grow your business anywhere. Climbing mountains is never easy, but at least Shopify gives me all the tools I need for my business to hit new peaks!
Whether you're selling carabiners or crop tops, start selling with Shopify today and join the platform simplifying commerce for millions of businesses worldwide. We've built the platform so you can keep climbing and grow your business to new heights.
With Shopify, you really can sell to anyone, from anywhere.
This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Start selling online today. Sign up for a free trial at shopify.com/free22. 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 Internet connection required. Not available on mountaintops or seafloors.